Hi, Allison Pukshavinsky with Nuseed. The date, August 1st, 2021. And I am standing in the middle of a sunflower field in the heart of the drought. So the area I'm in North Dakota, and I'm in an area that is in that dark red, so that extreme drought. And really there's one word to describe the sunflowers that are in these drought type areas, and that is short. Now, usually we want to show pictures of beautiful sunflowers, maybe, you know, some disease issues and insects on sunflowers that look decent. But fact of the matter is, this is reality. This is what a lot of us are seeing, and this is what a lot of growers' fields look like in these really droughty areas. And so I just wanted to go through some things that I'm seeing in this field. So even though we are in a drought, there still is some valuable information that we can pull off of these fields. So the first one that I want to talk about is insects. So these sunflowers are probably going to start blooming here in the next week or so, and the grower is going to have to decide whether or not he should spray for insects. So there's 4 main insects that he's going to have to consider whether or not he sprays. The first one is grasshoppers. Second one, red sunflower seed weevil. Now, with red sunflower seed weevil and grasshoppers, those are fairly easy to scout for. You know, the grasshoppers, you can see the damage on the sunflower leaves, or you can see whether or not they're hopping through the ditches. Red sunflower seed weevil, it's easy. You carry your can of bug spray around, and once that head starts to open, then you can go ahead, spray the head, and you can see the weevils coming out, and you really have a good idea whether or not you have an issue. But with the other 2 insects, they're moths. So you have your sunflower moth and your banded sunflower moth. And these ones are a little more difficult to scout for. But I wanted to mention them today because NDSU crop and pest reports are showing in certain areas high numbers of the banded sunflower moth. So both of these moths can do damage similar to the red sunflower seed weevil, lays its larvae. You know, the larvae will tunnel into the seed and then leave the seed with a little exit hole. So number 1, we want to protect our yield, what yield we have out there. And number 2, for you guys that are especially going to be selling into the bird food market, you want to make sure that you hit that 28-pound test weight. So if you're already in a dry situation, your sunflowers are probably going to be on the lighter end. So, you know, if you're flirting with that 28, 29-pound test weight, the last thing you want to do is have some insects come down there, come into your seeds and drop you down, you know, to that 27 level. So you want to be able to have, you know, a saleable grain for your crop. The second thing that I want to mention, that's good time of year to look for, is whether or not you had any residual herbicide from the previous year. Now, everyone's really good at following labeled directions and rotational restrictions, and we're all really careful about that. But sometimes when we're in an extreme drought type situation, some unusual things can happen. And I wanted to mention it because we're still in a drought and we're not quite sure, you know, when it's going to end. And so these might be some things that you can look for in your field this year, and potentially also be cautious of going into 2022 if we're still in this same situation. So I have a couple of plants, a couple of examples. Now, I'm not going to get into the particular herbicides that I'm seeing that are causing this. You know, that's something really talk to your local agronomist about, or you guys can reach out to somebody on the Nuseed team. But so these two plants. So this one is a little bit taller. It actually did put on a head, but the leaves are still really crinkled, and it is a little bit stunted, but for the most part it'll still put on a head and it'll contribute somewhat to yield. Now this plant, however, the actual main head, sometimes I see where it doesn't form a head at all. In this case, it's extremely tiny and it's not going to contribute to yield. honestly, this plant can just be considered a weed because it's not going to contribute at all. So some things to look out for this time of year. The next thing that I would encourage people to do is pull up your plants. Take a look at your sunflower roots and let's see what's happening below the ground. So sunflowers have an amazing root system and they're really able to tap down to get that subsoil moisture. But they need to have a good root system, established from the very beginning in order to do that. So just want to point out an example here. So this sunflower plant, and I've unfortunately been seeing this in a number of places this year. So this sunflower plant, this is the main taproot. So it just went 90 degrees sideways. So this plant is going to struggle to get down and get some of that subsoil moisture that it really should be able to get. The other times that I see some issues with this is in the fall. If we get some strong winds and some wet weather and that soil loosens up, sometimes these plants are more likely to tip over because they don't have that taproot established. Now, the other thing that you can see this time of year, if you pull up some plants, a lot of times you can see how deep you actually planted. So on this sunflower plant, I'm not sure if you can see it, but I can actually see the sunflower seed that was planted. So that's helping to tell me the depth that it was planted at and whether or not you had proper placement. Now, the last thing that I'm going to talk about is diseases. Now, you're probably laughing because you think, Allison, it's been hot, it's been dry. There's no diseases out there for sunflowers. And, well, while the pathologists at NDSU, the joke has kind of been that they've been on vacation this summer because there's not a lot going on. And there are a lot of diseases that we typically see in sunflowers that we're not going to see this year. And that's a good thing. I mean, there's got to be something good about being hot and dry. But there still are some diseases out there that you should keep an eye out on. And now is the perfect time of year because come fall, come harvest time, if you maybe have some skips or some gaps in your field, or perhaps maybe your sunflowers aren't yielding quite as well, it's really, really difficult to go back in time and do a diagnosis on what happened when the plants are dead. It's much easier this time of year, and it really helps you, learn about your sunflower field a little bit better. So let me show you guys an example that I was seeing in this field. So we were seeing some plants that were wilting. I wasn't noticing any major lesions or anything on the leaves, but completely wilting. Of course, these are two different size sunflowers. So the smaller one got hit by disease at a much younger stage versus this plant. Now, we are sending these samples actually off to NDSU to confirm what it is that we're seeing, just because it has been so hot and dry. We might see some more unusual things than we usually see. So I do want to confirm what we're seeing, but we do think it is potentially Sclerotinia root rot. So we're seeing that wilting type. We're seeing girdling at the base. And the other thing is we're seeing this white mycelia around the root. So not saying that this disease is in your field or that it's even prevalent in the sunflower region, but the point is to get out and look at your sunflower fields, because a plant like this, come harvest time, this is going to be shriveled up, it's going to be dried. We're going to have no idea really what killed this sunflower plant. So by going out into your field now, maybe looking at some of these things that I talked about, it can really help you either plan for fall or plan for 2022. So with that, get out, look at your sunflower fields. Let's keep smiles on our faces. Let's keep our chin up, and let's continue to pray for rain.